There is an end of their bar, in their snack bar, where 3 seats are reserved for Dean and Frank and Sammy Davis.
I love that.
On the end, and the cover of their little snack shop menu is that famous picture of the 3 of them joking around.
Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 98. If you'd like more information about the podcast, it's all at the website desertladydiaries.com, and I invite you to engage with the guests, with other listeners, or me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries, or on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. This Desert Lady Diaries episode comes to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. I met my guest, Christine Anthony, in Los Angeles. She was my first landlord in L.A. Christine was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and arrived in Los Angeles on a greyhound bus following her rock and roll boyfriend. Once in L.A., and long before she owned real estate, Christine had many careers, from washing dishes, selling magazines and shoes, to working in television commercial production and then for ad agencies. Now retired and spending more time in her home in Las Vegas, Christine has become pretty handy and stays busy with her rental properties while also serving as conservator for her brother Robert, who is a paraplegic. What was your first experience with desert?
I was on assignment. I was producing a TV commercial and ended up on the Glamis sand dunes.
Where
which
are
is
those?
A wonderful place, almost at the Mexican border, about the middle of California at the Mexican border. And that was my first experience realizing what a desert could be. Otherwise, I may have been in a desert, but wasn't paying attention to anything as such.
Right. Were you living in Los Angeles at that time?
I was living in Los Angeles,
Okay.
yes, at that time.
Yeah, so I remember when I came to Los Angeles and met you, at some point we had a conversation, and you're like, well, this is a coastal desert. And I had never really considered that, just based on the greenery that was around me, the flowers and everything like that. I never really considered that it would be a desert. So what brought you to the desert in Las Vegas?
The desert in Las Vegas. I've always been looking for my next good deal, and somewhat of a speculator and gambler, I think. Not
Real estate and otherwise.
real estate and otherwise, being in Las Vegas notwithstanding. But came here and did a looky-loo thing with a real estate person and found something. Not exactly when I went out with the real estate person, but later on, from all the ads I was getting, I saw something I really fell in love with, house-wise. Mm-hmm. And bought it without ever seeing it, and then went to see it a couple days later.
Wow.
And it worked out. It really was quite a find. And I'm very happy about having a swimming pool in my life. It feels
No
like
kidding.
I got there.
To have a in-the-ground pool, which is lovely.
Pool.
Thank you for sharing it with me.
Thank you for stopping out.
So let's step back a little bit to Christine Anthony, born and raised in Cleveland, and then leaves Cleveland in, the late 70s?
Left Cleveland around 1978 in a Greyhound bus on April Fool's Day.
Oh.
As a matter of fact. Drove out of town to be with the rock and roll boyfriend that I had met up with, who was traveling on the road. And with his help, ended up in Los Angeles, thinking to live together, but that didn't work out at all. So.
Right. But you stayed then.
I did stay in Los Angeles. Yes, I did.
So making your way in Los Angeles, what did that look like for you when you first got to town?
I had $7
Oh my gosh.
in my pocket when I got into Los Angeles, and fortunately had a couple of friends who had already relocated from Cleveland that I got in touch with and became the roommate of one of them, and we shared an apartment. And there was a little bit of culture shock going on in an all Hispanic neighborhood, and I'm a white girl. Is that okay to say?
That's fine to say.
So it was a little bit of culture shock.
Well,
Got
because that's
over
very
that.
different than Cleveland, Los Angeles.
Oh, very
is
different,
very different
than the demographic in Cleveland Heights, Ohio.
Right.
And the honeymoon was over with the romance, and that ended, and I stayed in Los Angeles. Kind of thrashed around for a while until I ended up in film production, working for a small commercial film production company.
Do you remember, are any of those shoots more memorable than any others? that maybe some crazy stuff happened, or?
Oh, well, the one that tell the story with occasionally, and I'm not going to mention any names right now, but when I'm going to say, killed a young child actress.
Oh my gosh.
On one of the sets. It was her first job. And I was tasked with looking after her on the set, and we were playing, and we were under a tree and in the shade, and they said, oh, let's have her come in to be on camera now, and I picked her up real fast under a low-hanging branch that went smack down the middle of her head. I did not think I would ever work in that town again, but it worked out. Her little part called for her to be kind of teary-eyed.
Oh, well.
And so she was.
So you did your job.
I did my job. I got her there. Is that method acting when that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When you need to cry and you bash your
Hit
head.
me again.
Yeah, that's method acting. So I gave her a first lesson in method acting. And fortunately they called me back.
Well, that's
to
good.
work.
Right.
My job
right.
was not lost.
So you did that for a while, working in production, and then you kind of moved into, was that then into the ad agency part of it?
Yeah, there was a very forward-thinking woman that hired me. We called them sides. When you were on the production company side, you were kind of your own team. And there was a little bit of versus the ad agency in there. Not animosity or anything, but, it's like, oh, what do they want now? Except they were paying for everything. And she worked for an ad agency and hired me to work on the ad agency side, doing the production, the producing part on the ad agency side. And that worked out very well for me. Instead of having to bring the lunch and the video playback and things, I was the one asking when's lunch and where's the video village, where's my chair. So that worked out.
Yeah, for sure. And then at some point, you started looking for real estate in Los Angeles, and that's how we met. Was I ended up coming to Los Angeles to rent as I was moving, and you were there as landowner and landlord of a really nice piece of property in Atwater Village, which I still have a piece of my heart in.
Oh.
Because it really is a nice place.
Oh, it's a wonderful place. I got very, very lucky with that little piece of property.
Yeah.
Because the popularity of the area just went through the roof, and the property became that much more valuable for people to rent, and just the value of the property.
Right. Which
allowed me to leverage that value and get this house here in Las Vegas.
Right. So what was the impetus behind, I'm going to buy a house in Las Vegas, or did you just come out and then got a wild hair and said, I think I'm going to look at houses?
Well, I was always on the lookout for investment in around the Los Angeles area, and that was during the time when the property values and the cost of things was just skyrocketing. So I was in Las Vegas, and I went out with a real estate person just for kicks and started to realize the value of the property here and how affordable it was, and got serious about finding something here. The investment, first of all, I was thinking I would rent it shorter term and come and go from it, in between time, but like the place too much. And not only like the house that I'm in, but also like the neighborhood situation here in a little area called Paradise Palms, where people really look out for each other, and a neighborhood watch means something. And they have parties all the time.
That's fun.
They party together
Right.
quite a bit. So it was a real find to kind of stumble into this neighborhood.
Right.
And I like it here. I still go back and forth to Los Angeles, managing the rental properties and looking after my disabled brother who still lives in Los Angeles.
Right. So he lives on his own, kind of.
He's in a situation that's called a board and care. There's 6 clients in the house. It is a house that looks after some of the very most disabled people. My brother's diagnosed as a quadriplegic. He has a little bit of hand ability, but not very much anymore. And he lives in what I consider very, very lucky surroundings. Another house that was a super find was the home that he's now in. And they don't have any system like that in Nevada. like the system they have in California,
Oh.
which is a really, really good system of support for disabled people. It works out pretty well.
So you'll continue to go back and forth.
I will continue to go
Right.
back and forth.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in addition to the pluses of the neighborhood and the neighbors, what are some other differences, would you say, between living in Los Angeles and then now that you're making your life? You've been here, over a year?
Well, it'll be 2 years on Halloween
Okay.
that I closed escrow on the house.
Right.
And
I mean, I guess the obvious thing is the heat.
that's exactly what I was going to say. It does not usually go 105 and 106 for 10 or 12 or 20 days in a row, very many places,
Right.
let alone Los Angeles. So that's a big difference. There's a lot less traffic. People are nicer to each other here. Things are less expensive. People seem to be a little bit happier in their situation here. Although the situation is, there isn't so much struggle. You're not up against the competition and everything that there is in Los Angeles.
Right.
Los Angeles is such a competition. It doesn't feel like that here. People are happier, I think, are happier in their situations here. At least it seems that way when you start, because everybody talks to everybody here. You know, when you start talking to people in the line at the grocery store or in the line at whatever store you happen to be in,
Right.
people are very willing to share their stories, listen to your story, as opposed to Los Angeles, where if you make eye contact with somebody, they run the other way. So it's much friendlier over here.
Mm-hmm.
Much, much friendlier. And cheaper.
And cheaper, right.
A
Yeah.
lot of things are a lot less expensive here.
When you're at these neighborhood parties, the people that you're meeting, what's the percentage of people that are like born and raised Vegas versus people that have moved here from other places?
I'd say it's probably surprisingly close to 50-50. There are people in this neighborhood who have owned their house since they were built in the early 60s. So at the one age end of the bracket of people that attend the parties, and a lot of the younger people have been there their whole lives as well. Maybe not. Yeah, probably could be 50-50, 40-60. And then many of them are retirees, and a lot of them are young families coming into this neighborhood because it's still affordable, and they really like the mid-century modern vibe.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. How many houses do you think are in the development, or do you know how many houses are?
You know, I should know that, but I don't. I'm going to say it's probably at least 400.
Wow, that's
in the
bigger than I
development.
would have
It's called
thought.
Paradise Palms.
Okay.
It goes quite a bit north of Desert Inn Boulevard as well.
Okay.
The homes, they're a little smaller up there, so there's more of them in the same space. We probably, at the parties, the Paradise Palm parties, there's probably usually 80 or 100 people come and go from those parties.
That's pretty good.
And the golf course, the parties at the oldest golf course in Las Vegas, that they have parties for us there, are not as attended. I think because you have to pay for your own drinks at the golf course. The party, it's all like open bar. You bring your own drinks to the parties. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, the golf courses, you pay for the drinks. But
Right.
also at the end of the parties, there's a half hour, 45 minutes of driving golf balls.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it's great
Oh,
fun.
wow.
They let us out on the driving range, and they have a pro. You know, the pro helps you out.
That's
So
cool.
it's really interesting.
Yeah. And the designers of these homes, you've told me, were some of the people who've worked in Palm Springs on those homes.
Well, the style mid-century modern. There's a couple, three main architects that did houses in this development. Two of them, I have no idea who they are. I knew at one time. The people that did my house were a company called Palmer and Crissell. They had such things as things called clerestory windows, which are high pointing windows in the front of the houses. They did separation between the patio with things called breeze block, and people would recognize the style right away.
They have a whole week, I think it's a week, down in Palm Springs. I can't remember what time of the year it is, but it's Modernism Week.
Right.
So I don't know if I imagine they must do house tours and things like that. Do they do anything like that here?
They do a couple days here with at least one bus tour that you take around, and people open their homes to that. there's not just this neighborhood, but there's a number of other neighborhoods around the Strip development that started. The developments came about in the mid-60s, early to mid-60s, which is the mid-century modern. There's also mid-century ranch neighborhoods, which is also a very, very cool kind of genre of 60s and 70s ranch houses. Are quite distinctive in their own styling. When you know you're in a late 60s ranch house, you know you're in one.
Do they have sunken living rooms or that kind of stuff?
That sort of kind of stuff, the outside, the front wall is half brick or stone veneer around the bottom of it, and slopey roofs that come really low to the ground, rambling houses that just kind of go on. There is not too far from here a neighborhood that used to be an equestrian neighborhood. Oh, really? Kind of just a few blocks away. And there are probably areas of it where horse keeping is a thing you can do. It's coincidental because I have the same situation in Los Angeles.
Right, yeah.
There's an equestrian community in Atwater Village. So
yeah. Is that the woman we went to the Hollywood Bowl with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. It was my first time, and I'll never forget it because she has the
she has like the best.
She has the little best booth there. It's like the last one before the rest of the bowl goes on in the back, the seating, and that was a lot of fun. We saw Norah Jones, I think.
I think we did.
I remember, yeah. Being in Vegas now for almost 2 years, what kind of misconceptions do you think other people have about Las Vegas?
That it's only the Strip, that's all there is here, is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of stuff.
Right.
Which is fine on the Strip, and actually that is an enormous employer of people here, the hotels and casinos and restaurants. But there's a whole communities and neighbors and suburbs, and people really live here.
Well, because people have to do banking, and they go to the post office, and they go to the grocery store. They have kids.
There is a community that supports the Strip that are the people that live here. And now the place is getting the football team and the football stadium and things that the people that live here never had before. Was their own team to back up. So that's a big deal here. There's a lot more focus. There's a lot more industry outside of the gambling and the gaming industry that's coming and taking a look at Las Vegas and Nevada as far as places to locate it. I think there's a big Google facility going in down in Henderson.
Okay.
Is it Google or Amazon? Anyway, one of those big guys is investing a tremendous amount of money in a facility down there. That news just came out a few weeks ago at the most, that they're moving in here. The Raiders, their training camp is huge. They just put in a beautiful stadium for their minor league baseball team.
I didn't even know they had a minor league baseball team.
I think they're called the Double A's or no, that's the league they're in. I don't remember what they're called, but very popular and a sold out house every time.
Well, those are fun things to go to. The tickets are typically inexpensive. They always have some kind of entertainment in between the inning changes, and so I think those are very family-friendly kind of things. So for people that live here looking for things to do over and above what's available to the tourists.
Can't not mention the Golden Knights, the hockey team, the ice hockey team, who came so close. And they're going to continue to be a powerhouse and a team that the families and people who live here can really get behind.
Right. So growing up in Cleveland, did you ever imagine yourself moving to the West Coast, living in Los Angeles, living in the desert in Las Vegas?
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I did. Everybody, I think, growing up in Cleveland imagines themselves somewhere else out of Cleveland. I gave a shot at Florida, but that didn't work out.
Where in Florida did you go?
Miami.
Oh, wow.
It was spring break, and I said, I'll hang out here for a few weeks and not go right back. But that was short-lived, and went back to Cleveland and just landed in Los Angeles and thought, I'll give this a try. The Cleveland was over for me.
I lived there for 6 or 7 years, and I found it really difficult to get into some sort of community there. I don't know whether I just wasn't finding my people, if I was on the wrong side of town, because you've got the east side and the west side.
Oh,
and
yes.
I was on the west side, but I feel like I probably should have been on the east side.
Maybe you were an East Sider at heart.
At heart, exactly.
Yeah, that's
right.
possible.
Exactly. So, and I know a number of people, actually somebody that I worked with when I lived in Cleveland ended up leaving there within the last, I want to say, probably 5 or 6 years herself and moving to LA with her daughter and loving it and doing really, really well. What do you think it is about Cleveland that people stay there?
There is a real camaraderie about Cleveland between sticking up for their famous Cleveland Browns, never won a game in that one season, that are going to make a comeback now and take it all, I'm sure. The same thing that the Cleveland Indians did, the sports team.
Right.
So it isn't just gathering around the sports team, but it's kind of, people are very loyal to Cleveland. And not that I'm not, just because I left. I'm very loyal to Cleveland as well. Is this the 50th anniversary year of the river catching fire? Anyway, It's a big anniversary year for the news event when the Cuyahoga River caught fire. Right. It's an anniversary year for that. So fun things like that we can gather around from Cleveland. And the dog pound with the losing football team and the comeback of the Cleveland Indians. And not just sports, though, but
there's
the
some
city
amazing, the Cleveland Clinic is an amazing facility, and then they've got Playhouse.
The comeback of the river.
Right.
And cleaning the place up, and the spots that are now along the riverbank that are entertainment spots, entertainment venues, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and just the parks system for that matter. They have the Metropolitan Park System back there called the Emerald Necklace.
Oh, yeah.
That is a run of parks that they're trying to connect to have a wildlife corridor of some kind. And it's wonderful that they pay attention to a thing like that. They're ahead of their time. That's maybe about the only thing, but they are in preserving a little bit of that, where on the other hand, they spent so many years polluting the river with the steel industry and everything. There's kind of a 180 in some attitudes about things.
Being here in Vegas, do you have any insider tips for anyone if they're coming to Vegas about either things to do, places to stay, secret, cool local things that the average person coming to Vegas is just thinking, oh, it's just the Strip?
Well, my new thing is the Pinball Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fabulous. You go play pinball. Every pinball machine you ever imagined is there. I take people to the Valley of Fire, which is a state park, which is really, really quite beautiful, and even a lot of locals don't even know about it. You keep your eyes open, as well as the big shows. I mean, you can go and see any half a dozen reigning stars and entertainers on any given night, but the smaller things that there are to do. I'm going to go see Book of Mormon, which you couldn't get a ticket to that in LA or New York, but here we could get a ticket. There's some very, very impressive art collections that come and go from here. Yeah. And heavens knows every political candidate makes a stop here. Not once, but frequently they'll come through Las Vegas to be able to perhaps gather a crowd that is a cross-section of Americans that are here traveling on any given day or night in those hotels and up along the Strip. And there are people from all over the world here all the time. People ask if I feel safe with all those, but all the people coming and going. And aside from the terrible, terrible shooting that was a couple years ago, this city they have 350,000 people on their street in New Year's, for example.
Wow.
And St. Patrick's Day, and the number of people and the holidays and celebrations that go on here, and they are managed. They are safe and they're taken care of, so they really have a system going here that seems to be working.
Well, and yet I don't really think about that much. I don't think most people do. They just think, oh, I'm just coming to a tourist destination. But you're right, it becomes almost like when I lived in Charlotte and the NASCAR races came to town, and our population would swell by hundreds of thousands of people just for 2 weeks. And to think about the infrastructure that's required to manage that Whereas you guys are experiencing that here in Las Vegas on a pretty regular basis.
There's something every month that a
Right.
whole bunch of people get together to
Exactly.
celebrate. There's car racing up north. At that big racetrack, they have I can't remember what the huge music fest. I think we want to call it the Daisy Festival, or some enormous 150,000 people gathering at this for music festivals and just any holiday that comes up that people escape here. But the ones like St. Patrick's Day, where everybody's storming around on the streets, and New Year's is such a big celebration out in the streets.
Right. Do they close the strip?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they do?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
They have it totally organized to shut down and have those
Right.
celebrations. Organized and practiced
Right.
at it.
So have you found any places since you've been here that caters to people that are into that whole Rat Pack vibe that really was the beginnings of Las Vegas?
This neighborhood here, very much so.
Okay.
Mentioned the golf club parties.
Right.
There is an end of their bar, in their snack bar, where 3 seats are reserved for Dean and Frank and Sammy Davis.
I love that.
On the end, and the cover of their little snack shop menu is that famous picture of the 3 of them joking around.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's always, especially in this neighborhood, trying to get a history on the house that they live in and who might have lived there. This neighborhood and the early streets, some of the first streets that were built, were owned or leased by the showrooms, by the casinos and the showrooms.
Oh, wow.
To put up the people when they come to stay here. Instead of staying in the hotel, if they were here on a long-term engagement, they'd put them in one of these houses.
Oh, neat.
So there was it Bobby Darin? No, lived a couple doors down. Somebody that when I mentioned his name to a much younger person, they said, "Who?" And well, you know,
that.
so there's Phyllis Diller had stayed around the corner, and Johnny
wow.
Carson had a house down the street. There's a lot of reference to that.
Sure.
And a lot of searching for that kind of information about your house or about your street. There is one or two, I think I was just talking about the Tropicana. There are very, very few older places left.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day, and the Sands and the Riviera.
That are really
not
the old
there anymore, right?
Yeah, so many places are gone.
Yeah.
The Aladdin, and you just saw those implosions when they blew up the places. They would always be on the 5 o'clock news.
Right.
They blew up another landmark in Las Vegas.
Throw Chris Angel in a tube all locked up like Houdini, and he, magically appears out of it.
But
it is a show town.
Yeah, and it's constantly changing in order to stay up with or stay ahead of their needs. Their needs to satisfy the tourist business being so big, but now the sports industry coming up fast. The housing industry is booming here. It's crazy. There aren't enough people to work the jobs that are available right now.
Jeez.
People are actually moving here with the companies that are coming here. It's a booming place. There are a lot of people that are quite surprised that only thing, back to the beginning of our conversation, what's the difference from the Strip and the rest of Las Vegas?
Yeah.
People don't see past that. Anybody I talk to, I say, buy something in Las Vegas and do it fast. And they're like, ooh, Las Vegas. It's like, no, don't think about it that way.
Right.
Think about putting your money somewhere where it's going to do some good for you.
Right. Well, and it's a place that isn't going to fall by the wayside anytime soon. It's definitely, still, like you said, visioning what's next for them, and between the sports teams, all the conventions that come here, just all the tourists that come for the casinos, poker tournaments, whatever it is, there's always something happening, something going on, and they'll attract, the more that they build up, the more that they will attract.
Well, they most certainly have had their crashes, real estate and economy and otherwise. It gets overbuilt and the bubble bursts. It's not a place that wouldn't happen or couldn't happen. The people are always going to keep coming. Whatever's going on the periphery is what it is.
Right.
But the people will always be here. I happen to be in a house where I can sit in my swimming pool and watch the airplanes come in on their landing pattern to the airport right over my house. I kind of like it. There's a friend of mine that I see at the parties who works at the airport and also loves that his pool gets a landing pattern sometimes also.
Yeah.
And we were both talking that we just lay there and maybe I shouldn't say this, but lay there, watch the planes come in and say, bring money.
Yeah. Right.
So they can support the economy here.
Exactly.
And the gas can be $1 less expensive than it is in Los Angeles.
Right. Well, believe it or not, 30 minutes is up. So before we end the conversation, though, for my Patreon supporters, I would love it if you would select 4 numbers between 1 and 50. And Christine's answers to those questions will be available to the folks that so generously support me on Patreon. So if you're interested in hearing Christine's answers to these questions or any of the ladies I've interviewed since the beginning of the year, go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and check out the Patreon option. Okay. 4 numbers between 1 and 50.
7, 22, 41, 36.
Okay, so I'm going to read the questions and then we'll come back and answer them. Any advice for a previous boss? How would your best friend describe you? Did you say
41
36?
and then 41 and then 36.
Okay, 36 didn't come out when I wrote it down. It looks like 32.
No, it's
but that's
36.
okay.
Yeah.
How has being in the desert changed you? And the last one will be cake or ice cream? Which kind? So if you want to hear Christine's answers to those questions, go over to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and join us over in Patreon. Thanks again.
Bye.
Christine is a really neat lady, and I'm so glad to have met her and that a friendship has grown and continues from our initial landlord-tenant relationship. If you're not already receiving it, I invite you to sign up for the weekly newsletter. It will bring each week's new episode directly to your email box with a link to click to listen. Just go to desertladydiaries.com and click on Weekly Newsletter. See you next week. Thanks so much for listening.